Welcome to Chat and Chill podcast. Enjoy the story. The CEO's revenge on the homewrecker. My family has a long tradition in business. After earning my PhD, I took over the family company directly. My husband, Ethan, a talented young man from the countryside, was 3 years younger than me and was a junior in my doctoral program. In the university environment, men like him were truly rare treasures. Ethan was sophisticated, educated, and always made the women around him feel comfortable. After 2 years of knowing each other, we got married. When our daughter was born, I decided to work remotely and promoted Ethan to vice president, allowing him to sign important documents on my behalf. However, despite his abilities, Ethan was impatient and lacked the ability to shoulder great responsibilities. I initially thought keeping him in a lower position longer would help him mature, but I never expected it would become an opportunity for him to seek out a mistress. Rumors spread throughout the company that Ethan was involved with a young graduate. At first, I laughed it off, thinking that as long as he wasn't foolish, he wouldn't destroy his own future. But I underestimated his stupidity. Ethan was bold enough to have an affair right in my office. He didn't know that, for security reasons, my office had hidden cameras installed to protect confidential documents. I saw everything, his affectionate gaze, the way that woman leaned into him so sweetly. Her voice was sugary, but to me, it was nauseating. I knew Ethan's appeal wasn't just his appearance and charm. The real attraction for that woman was money. But where did his money come from? It was my money that he was using to pamper another woman. Whether I divorced him or not, I would still be the one at a loss. Just the thought of it made my chest tighten with rage. "Mommy, hug hug." My daughter's innocent voice pulled me back to reality. In that moment, I felt the true warmth of family. Her name was Ivy Lynn, introduced by my former professor along with 4 or 5 others. I didn't want to bother supervising them, so I left them all under Ethan's management. Ivy Lynn was attractive and had a sweet tongue, but her work performance was mediocre at best. Sometimes, I even caught her watching movies or obsessing over her favorite idols at work. Initially, I thought Ethan valued her abilities, so I didn't fire her. One day, I casually mentioned it at home, and to my surprise, that little girl ran straight to me to apologize. Looking back now, it's clear that she had no fear of slacking off because Ethan was covering for her. As for her apology, it was probably just another one of Ethan's orchestrated acts. What a joke. To them, I must have seemed like a foolish woman, being deceived over and over again. Ivy Lynn's social media was once quite ordinary, but after starting at my company, her lifestyle changed dramatically. In her very first week at work, she was already carrying a Louis Vuitton handbag and wearing a hair clip worth over $3,000. Given my background and hard work over the years, it wasn't unusual for me to own such things. But Ivy Lynn, a fresh graduate, effortlessly living in luxury thanks to my husband, that stung. At her prime, she was enjoying the best life had to offer, while I had spent my youth grinding, working overtime, and writing academic papers. Then there were the pictures, her in black silk nightwear that perfectly outlined her figure, taken in a lavish suite at the Shangri-La Hotel. A single designer bag in exchange for a night, not a bad deal, but the money used, mine. The more I scrolled through her posts, the more disgusted I felt. Ethan had given Ivy Lynn everything, lavish gifts, an extravagant lifestyle, nothing was spared. La Prairie Skin Caviar Luxe, a skincare set worth over $1,400 designed to firm skin and slow aging. What woman wouldn't want to stay youthful forever? I was no exception. Ivy Lynn had a set, too, a gift from Ethan. He knew nothing about women's products, so he simply bought everything I was using and handed it to her. Winning over a naive girl without lifting a finger, how clever. At some point, I stopped feeling anything. In just a few months, Ethan had used my hard-earned money to spoil this little princess. Maybe I should be proud. This was proof of my ability to make money, after all. But he had just crossed my limit. Ethan came home on time every day. The suit hanging in our closet was one I had custom-made for him when he was promoted to vice president. It wasn't just about appearance. The name Happy Tiding had a nice ring to it, and it was appropriately priced for his position. It kept him from looking too cheap or overly extravagant. But the dress shirt underneath, that was his own choice. A soft pink, he claimed it made him look youthful and matched well with me. Coincidentally, he had bought that shirt right after Ivy Lynn started working for us. His wristwatch was new, too, now a flashy gold one. "Honey, there's an important meeting tomorrow. You should lead it." 2 years of marriage, and Ethan still kept up the habit of greeting me with a hug and a kiss when he got home. But now his gestures felt half-hearted. Before, I used to think he was just tired. Now I could sense the insincerity, the forced effort. It made my stomach churn. "You've had a long day. Why don't you take a shower and relax?" He smelled of his usual body wash, fresh from a shower. I casually checked his suit. Spotless, not a single strand of hair on it. The scent clinging to his clothes was Joy by Dior, my favorite perfume. But ever since our daughter was born, I had stopped wearing it. There were too many little details piling up. I had trusted him too much. I had overlooked too much. The next morning, after the meeting, I had someone summon Nate to my office, Ethan's younger brother. He had dropped out of high school and was technically employed at our company, though in reality, he did nothing but collect a paycheck. Ethan often ordered Nate around, and Nate never minded as long as there was money involved. I wanted to see if he knew about his brother's affair. As soon as he walked in, he helped himself to my tea, a habit I found distasteful. Annoyed, I told him to take 2 boxes of premium Longjing tea from my cabinet and get out. Nate chuckled awkwardly and plopped onto the sofa, flashing a fawning smile. "Sister-in-law, what's up?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him. He shifted uncomfortably, his grin faltering. "Your mother visited a few days ago, remember? She asked me to find you a suitable match." His smile froze. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to bring this up. Sister-in-law, look at me. No education, no family background. I wasn't giving him a chance to refuse. "You're my brother-in-law. I can't let people look down on you. Here's $30,000, no password. Ivy Lynn, the one working under your brother. She's a good match for you. You have 3 days to make something happen." I placed a bank card and a picture of Ivy Lynn on the table. Nate didn't hesitate. He snatched up the card and, for good measure, pocketed my $2,000 fountain pen as well. Clearly, he had no idea that Ivy Lynn was Ethan's mistress. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been ogling her picture like that. Perfect. Nate was the perfect pawn to tear this affair apart, and I couldn't wait to see it happen. Not long after work, Nate sent me a message on Facebook saying he had successfully arranged a date with Ivy Lynn. He even attached a picture. Both of them looked awkward, though Ivy Lynn seemed to be taking the initiative. Her smile was so sweet that even I, as a woman, had to admit she looked charming and beautiful. Later that night, just before bed, Ivy Lynn updated her social media. She posted a photo flaunting her youthful figure without the slightest hint of restraint. The only downside was the garish shade of pink lipstick, most likely a gift from Nate. His flirting tactics were embarrassingly outdated. To ensure my plan progressed smoothly, I decided to give him a little push. With his rustic, unsophisticated demeanor, there was no way a woman like Ivy Lynn would genuinely be attracted to him. So I took Nate to a luxury shopping mall and had him transformed from head to toe, dressed like a wealthy, handsome bachelor. "A good horse needs a fine saddle," I teased. "Dress like this, Ivy Lynn will definitely be impressed. Go on, handsome, and make sure to bring home a grandchild for your mother soon." Nate admired his reflection in the mirror and grinned. "Don't worry, sister-in-law. I'll definitely win her over." That was the assurance I needed. I handed him the keys to a Lexus LM, a car I had prepared long ago. Unbeknownst to him, I had installed hidden cameras and a GPS tracker inside. Every move they made, I would be watching. Just as I had expected, Nate was ecstatic upon receiving the car keys. He lavished me with flattery, afraid that I might change my mind. That night, Ivy Lynn updated her Facebook again, but this time, not on her usual account. A woman like her, juggling multiple men, wouldn't possibly stick to just one social media profile. On this alternate profile, Ivy Lynn had shed her sweet princess image and now presented herself as a powerful, independent woman. Standing beside her, Nate looked less like a lover and more like a rich man's boy toy. Even when portraying herself as a strong, dominant woman, she wasn't immune to the advances of middle-aged men trying to flirt with her. I decided to speed things up. I called Nate and played into his greed. "Nate, you're moving too slow. Don't be stingy, spend more. I'm sending you another $20,000. Upon hearing this, he eagerly agreed. Women like Ivy Lynn only cared about high-end dining and luxury handbags, anything they could flaunt. Tomorrow, I would have him take her out for an extravagant day of indulgence. I refused to believe that Ivy Lynn wouldn't bite the bait. And sure enough, the next day, Nate reported back with excitement. "Sister-in-law, I've won her over." I never imagined that the once cold and distant Ivy Lynn would be so obedient now. As expected, she couldn't resist the temptation. Their relationship had progressed another step, but just like his brother, Nate was an idiot. He never stopped to consider, if not for the money I was feeding him, would a woman like Ivy Lynn ever let him take advantage of her? I watched through the hidden cameras in the car, witnessing them growing more intimate by the day. It was all unfolding exactly as I had planned. Early the next morning, I called Nate and told him to bring Ivy Lynn home to meet the family. He immediately agreed, showering me with gratitude. At this point, I was closer to him than his own brother. I carefully selected premium ingredients and hired a top-tier chef. Meanwhile, I kept Ethan at home. "Honey, why all the extravagance today? Are we expecting a special guest?" Ethan asked, puzzled. I smiled and pinched his cheek playfully. "You'll see, it's a surprise." Ethan stood frozen, visibly confused. We hadn't been intimate for over a year. At first, it was because I was busy caring for our child, but after discovering his affair, I deliberately distanced myself. Now he was clearly taken aback by my sudden warmth. "Thank you, sweetheart," Ethan cooed, trying to charm me, but inside I was laughing coldly. Once he saw his precious mistress on the arm of his own brother, he wouldn't be smiling anymore. As the estimated arrival time approached, I found an excuse to leave the house. Our mansion was equipped with hidden cameras I had installed behind Ethan's back over the past few days. I took my laptop to the car and opened the surveillance feed. Soon enough, Nate pulled up in the Lexus. He was brimming with confidence. The moment he saw Ethan, he turned to Ivy Lynn and said, "Go on, say hi to my brother." Ivy Lynn's expression shifted the moment she saw Ethan. Her face paled, but she quickly regained her composure. Ethan, on the other hand, stared at her coldly. "Brother, Ivy Lynn is my girlfriend now," Nate announced proudly, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Don't we make a great couple?" Ethan looked at the woman who used to be his secret lover, now acting all shy and delicate in his brother's embrace. Fury flashed in his eyes, but he bit back his words. His face turned red, then pale, before he finally forced out a stiff response. "Nate, she's not right for you. Break up with her as soon as possible." Nate couldn't understand why his older brother, who had always cared for him, was so adamantly against his relationship with Ivy Lynn. In his mind, Ivy Lynn was sweet, innocent, and well-mannered, the perfect girlfriend, one he must have earned through some miraculous twist of fate. A flicker of resentment ignited within him toward Ethan, but he simply reassured Ivy Lynn, "Don't worry. My sister-in-law is the real decision-maker in this house. Just be sweet to her, and everything will be fine." With that, he turned back to Ethan and declared, "Brother, Ivy Lynn and I are officially together now. Sister-in-law has already approved." Ethan's body visibly tensed, but he said nothing. Nate, brimming with excitement, led Ivy Lynn to the couch beside him. Young and impulsive, he couldn't resist showing affection to his new girlfriend, right in front of Ethan. Ethan's expression darkened. His former lover was being openly caressed by his own brother, and there was nothing he could do about it. Seizing an opportunity while Nate went to the restroom, Ethan yanked Ivy Lynn into a nearby room, his eyes burning with rage as he grabbed her by the throat. "Ivy Lynn, do you have anything to explain?" She smirked, her voice teasing. "Vice President Ethan, you saw it yourself. I'm with your little brother now. What's wrong? Are you jealous? Do you want your sister-in-law for yourself?" That wouldn't be impossible either. Ethan recoiled in disgust. He had chosen Ivy Lynn as a mistress because she seemed pure, obedient, and easy to control. Seeing her true colors now made his blood boil. He snarled, "I spent thousands on you every month. Just days ago, you told me I was the only one for you, and now you're with my brother, a lowlife." Ivy Lynn laughed, unfazed by his anger. "You're so naive. Those were just words to keep the money flowing. Nate is even more generous. He spent more on me in a few days than you did in a whole month. And well, he's younger, stronger, better in every way." Blinded by fury, Ethan slapped her across the face. "You filthy woman. You really thought I wanted you. Maybe I should call Nate in here to see how cheap you really are." Furious, Ivy Lynn sneered. "Stop pretending. Without your wife's money, you'd still be nothing. Do you think I'd ever let you touch me otherwise?" Before Ethan could react, she bolted out of the room, tugging her clothes into place. "Nate, help me." Nate, just returning from the restroom, heard her desperate cry and stormed into the room. Seeing Ivy Lynn's disheveled appearance, he didn't hesitate. His fist landed straight in Ethan's stomach. "You bastard! You dare to touch my woman!" Ethan clenched his teeth, his rage exploding as he tackled Nate to the ground. "For that gold-digging tramp, you think she loves you? You're a fool." "I won't let you insult Ivy Lynn," Nate yelled, throwing another punch. The two brothers grappled on the floor, exchanging blows like wild animals. Ivy Lynn, standing to the side, watched with a smirk of satisfaction. Observing the chaos from the surveillance feed in my car, I leaned back, a cold smile playing on my lips. Everything was going exactly as planned. Now it was my turn to take the stage. A grand performance like this wouldn't be complete without me. By the time I arrived home, the three of them were seated on the sofa, appearing as though they were the perfect picture of brotherly harmony. The atmosphere was warm, almost forced. I could guess what was running through their minds. None of them wanted me to find out what had happened. Since they were putting on a show, I naturally had to play along. I gestured toward the fresh scratches on Nate's face, clearly left by Ethan. "What happened here?" I asked. Then, giving Ethan a light shove, I added, "Go get some medicine for your brother." Ethan scoffed but didn't move. Nate quickly waved a hand. "It's nothing," he insisted. I chuckled, turning to Nate. "Had a bit too much fun with Ivy Lynn last night, huh? I mean, look at your car, it's freshly cleaned. Did you have to tidy up after an intense battle?" Nate's face turned red as he recalled the previous night. Without a second thought, he started flirting with Ivy Lynn again, right in front of me. Instead of stopping him, I smiled at Ivy Lynn. "As long as you give birth to a child for the La family, you'll get $1 million reward. Once you and Ethan get married, I'll make sure to prepare a very generous gift." Nate, oblivious to the growing tension, clung to my arm and grinned. "Sister-in-law, you're the best. I promise I'll treat you well in the future." Ivy Lynn, playing her role flawlessly, sweetly echoed. "Sister-in-law, Nate is my true love. I adore his mix of charm and bad boy energy." Throughout the entire exchange, Ethan remained silent. His fists clenched as he leaned back on the sofa, eyes closed, trying to maintain composure. I lowered my voice and asked, "Ethan, do you not like Ivy Lynn? Why are you so cold to her?" Ethan immediately denied it, hastily replying, "I'm just not feeling well." Feigning concern, I gently touched his arm. "Oh, that's not good. But you should at least make an effort, especially today. Ivy Lynn's visiting for the first time. You wouldn't want to leave a bad impression, right? You should help your brother marry her soon." Ethan gritted his teeth and forced a smile at Ivy Lynn. The expression on his face was more painful than if he had been crying. "You are listening to stories on Chat and Chill podcast. Enjoy the story." After sending Nate and Ivy Lynn off, that night I confronted Ethan directly. I told him I knew he had someone else. Ethan immediately put on an innocent act, swearing his loyalty to me. Without a word, I threw his bank statements onto the table. "Ethan, I've never checked your finances before, but this first glance is already full of surprises. Tell me, which little temptress have you been spending all this money on?" Ethan's bank account was one I had provided him with. I would deposit funds into it regularly, never once checking his expenditures. He must have thought that spending tens of thousands of dollars wouldn't catch my attention. He was wrong. If I hadn't caught him live on camera in my own office with Ivy Lynn, I might never have checked at all. I didn't care about the money itself. What I cared about was that he had dared to spend my money on another woman. Ethan's face turned pale as he stammered an excuse, claiming the money was for business expenses and swearing he had never betrayed me. I sneered and pointed at the list of transactions. Really? So those five-star hotels and luxury restaurants were business-related? And what about the lingerie purchases? Were those for your clients? And this car, bought using company funds, who's driving it? Ethan realized there was no escape. Slapping himself across the face, he fell to his knees and sobbed. Honey, I was wrong. It was a female client seducing me. I never actually did anything. Please, you have to believe me. Even now, he was still lying. He was terrified I would bring Ivy Lynn in to confront him. But I had no intention of divorcing him so easily. That would be letting him off too lightly. I sighed, pretending to soften. The child is still young. She needs her father. I don't care about who you mess around with, and I don't care about the money. Just don't spend another cent on her. If you retrieve everything you gave away, I'll forgive you this time. Seeing my change in attitude, Ethan clung to my leg and swore there would be no next time. The next day, he retrieved a luxury handbag worth $5,000 or $6,000 and presented it to me like a tribute. I threw it straight into the trash. The next day, I pressured Ethan to continue reclaiming the gifts. He pulled out the ownership certificate for a car he had bought for Ivy Lynn. Not entirely foolish, he had registered it under his own name, but the car and its keys were still in her possession. I acted as if I had no idea Ivy Lynn was his mistress and pushed him further. Is that all? Where's the car? What about the rest of the gifts? If you can't get them back, then we're getting a divorce. And you're returning everything I ever gave you. Ethan had been living a comfortable life under my financial support for years. Without me, he was nothing. Honey, I'll go get them right away, he stammered, rushing off as I watched with a cold smile. I wanted to see him and Ivy Lynn turn against each other like rabid dogs. Less than an hour later, my secretary called. Ethan and his brother were fighting in my office over Ivy Lynn. I immediately called for my driver, speeding toward the company while pulling up the office surveillance feed. Ethan had brought Ivy Lynn in to demand the return of the gifts. I had already arranged for Nate to be there on an errand. Normally, a confrontation wouldn't have turned violent, but Ivy Lynn, unwilling to return anything, attempted to seduce Ethan instead, offering her body in exchange for keeping the gifts. Ethan had suffered humiliation after humiliation from me in the past few days. Being in the office, the very place he used to indulge in his affairs with Ivy Lynn, made him reckless. He completely forgot why he was there and got carried away with her once again, only for Nate to walk in on them. A furious fight erupted immediately. The brothers went from exchanging insults to exchanging blows. Ethan, who already had little credibility left in the company, had now completely ruined his reputation. I had actually arrived earlier than they thought. I watched from the sidelines, waiting until both of them were battered and bruised before signaling for security to break them apart. The three of you are unbelievable, bringing your love triangle into my company, brawling like street thugs. All of you get out. Feigning fury, I didn't allow a single rebuttal, using this opportunity to also clean up the company's internal discipline. As the gossip-hungry employees scurried away, I turned to Ethan. Ethan, this mess is entirely your doing. You're fired. Get home, I'll deal with you there. I secretly called Nate over and handed him $10,000. Engia, stop getting involved with Ivy Lynn. Take a break, go travel for a while. I have things to handle here. I booked him a flight and sent him off. That very night, after Nate had disappeared, Ethan received a message from Ivy Lynn. Reading it aloud in front of me, perhaps to prove his innocence, he said, I have a video. Meet me tomorrow or I'll accuse you of assault. Seconds later, another message followed. 9 p.m. Jambay Beach. If you don't come, I'll jump. Ethan saw this as his last chance to prove his loyalty and insisted I go with him. The night was chilly, the beach nearly deserted. Ivy Lynn arrived, but not to throw herself into the sea. She wanted money. $700,000, or I'll take this to the police. Ethan stole a glance at me but firmly refused. You and Nate are both pathetic, Ivy Lynn spat, always cowering behind women. Seeing her demands failing, she turned her gaze to me. Don't look at me, I said calmly. Just show the video. It'll be great proof for me to divorce Ethan without any complications. Ivy Lynn screamed. Then I'll send it to your parents. To your company. Let's see how you survive when everyone knows the truth. I smirked. Sweetheart, companies can be rebuilt. I have money. But you, I know every wealthy wife in this city. Do you think they'll be as forgiving as I am? Disheveled, her hair wild, Ivy Lynn shrieked like a madwoman. You dare threaten me? You bitter old hag. No wonder you couldn't keep your husband. A little snake, like her thought she could stand against me. I had no interest in dealing with this any longer. Without another word, I turned and got into the car, leaving Ethan to settle things himself. Behind me, I heard a sharp slap, Ethan demanding his money back, followed by Ivy Lynn's anguished cries. Of course, violence wasn't the only way to handle things. Ivy Lynn, persistent as a fly, continued showing up at the company looking for Nate. But Nate had already left on my orders, so she had no one to find. Frustrated, she barged into my office, demanding to know where he was. Even with a fresh coat of makeup, the swelling around her eyes and the hollowness in her cheeks made her look desperate and drained. Nate knows exactly what you are, a gold digger. He's gone on vacation. Even if he comes back, you'll get nothing. Every cent he spent on you came from me, and for just a few tens of thousands of dollars, you were so eager to spread your legs. Ivy Lynn turned pale, then red with fury. You're forcing me into a corner. I'll expose you. I smirked, tilting my head. Ivy Lynn, you do realize you have a car, right? Officially, it's under my name now, but the car itself, nowhere to be found. Do you know how many years in prison you could get for grand theft, auto, on a $140,000 vehicle? She stiffened, her bravado faltering. The car isn't with me. You have no proof. I let out a cold laugh. Then explain why that same car is parked downstairs. Here's the deal. Leave the car and walk away, and I won't intervene in whatever mess you have with Ethan. Knowing she had no way out, Ivy Lynn finally handed over the keys. As for everything else you took, consider it gone. If you threw it away, it's trash anyway, I said dismissively, waving her off. I had no more patience for this woman. A little money to turn this vixen against the La family. Not a bad investment, but I wasn't finished with her. My entire network had already received word about Ivy Lynn's true nature. With her reputation in ruins, her dream of bagging a rich man was over. Finding another sugar daddy would be nearly impossible now. Returning home, I threw the signed divorce agreement at Ethan. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Sign it and get out of my house. Ethan fell to his knees, pleading. Honey, didn't you say if I got the gifts back, we wouldn't divorce? Please don't leave me. I truly love you. I let out a cold laugh. Ethan, you're naive. Drop the act. If you don't sign, I'll take you to court. You cheated first. You won't get a dime. Seeing there was no escape, Ethan signed the papers in silence and walked away, defeated. I had the security team remove all his belongings from my home, but it wasn't over yet. Months later, I saw Nate again, now a street thug, bloodied from a recent fight. I bought him a meal, gave him some money, and never saw him again. Through him, I learned the fates of those who wronged me. Ethan was drained of his last dime by Ivy Lynn before she abandoned him. He returned to his village, married a shrew who later kicked his parents into a nursing home and threw Nate onto the streets. As for Ivy Lynn, she finally met her match. A ruthless socialite broke her completely, leaving her with shattered limbs. But what did any of that have to do with me? The end. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Chat and Chill podcast for more stories.